Hi everybody, I've got a little video here about the algebraic process known as completing the square. Alright, it's used to solve quadratic equations. And so we're going to take a look at it here and explain the steps on how this works. Alright, so first I want to make sure that it's clear right at the outset that completing the square is just an algebraic process that you do to convert a standard form equation into a perfect square form equation. So standard form equations, remember, look something like that. X squared plus bx plus c equals 0, a trinomial, you've called them. And what you do is you convert that into an equation that looks like that, where you have a perfect square binomial equaling some number. Those are fairly easy to solve. So that's why we do this, to help solve quadratic equations. Now, you may notice something missing from my standard form over there. You may be more familiar with ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So right here at the outset, I want to make the comment that this process really works best when the a term is equal to 1, when a equals 1, I should say. So it's just plain old x squared instead of some other number times x squared. That's when completing the square process really is an easy solution method to solving the equation. All right? And you probably want to use this on a quadratic equation that cannot be factored. If you can factor it, most people would prefer just to do factoring and the zero product property in order to get the solutions to the equation. But not all quadratics can be factored. So completing the square is something that you do in that case. All right, so we're going to illustrate the steps of completing the square. There's only really 3 steps, and we'll use a little example to help illustrate them. We're going to solve the equation x squared minus 10x plus 6 equals 0. All right, note that a equals 1 and that this cannot be factored. All right, so step 1. Well, all you do is move that constant term, in this case, negative 6, over to the right side or across the equal sign, all right? And that's pretty easy to do. So that just looks like that. X squared minus 10x equals negative 6, all right? Note that it changed from positive on the left side to negative on the right side. Okay, now, this is the critical step of completing the square. Notice that that middle term in the original standard form equation was negative 10. That is the thing we're going to use right now. We're going to take that, so-called the b term, and we're going to add b over 2 squared to both sides of the equation, okay? So here again, b equals negative 10. So if you think about negative 10 divided by 2, that's negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25. So we're going to add 25 to both sides of the equation. And there you see it. That's what it looks like. 25 gets added to both sides, so the equation is still valid as is. We haven't really changed it. And now, this allows us, that number allows us to factor the left side as a perfect square binomial. And that's the third step of this process. Factoring the left side of the equation to a perfect square binomial. And that means that we've got x minus 5 squared on the left equals, well, 25 minus 6 is 19, so it equals 19. All right, now we have done it. We have taken the standard form version of the equation, converted it into perfect square form. All right, and it is ready to solve. It's in perfect square form. That's good news. They're easy to solve. And this is why it's called completing the square. Because now we have, by adding that number, we have completed the perfect square on the left side. And we can factor it as a binomial squared. And now all we have to do is solve by taking the square root of both sides. And of course, x minus 5 squared, when you take the square root of that, you just have x minus 5. And on the right side there, it's the square root of 19, but don't forget this plus minus sign. Remember, a quadratic equation always has 2 solutions, and this is how you get both solutions, is by adding that plus minus. So x minus 5 equals positive square root of 19, and x minus 5 equals negative square root of 19. It's really almost like 2 equations now. But we're writing it as one equation with that plus minus sign, all right? And that's pretty simple to solve. All you do is add 5 to both sides, and there's your solution. 5 plus or minus the square root of 19. So that's the solutions. All right? So that's how you do it. It's a three-step process. Let's do a quick summary of those three steps then again. And so the first step, I would say, well, it's just kind of the background. Completing the square is a process used to change standard form equations into perfect square form equations because they're easy to solve. All right, so it looks like that. Something, ends up with that perfect square binomial on one side and some number on the other side, okay? So the key step there is adding b over 2 squared to both sides of the equation. That is the number that allows the factorization into a perfect square binomial, all right? And that's what that's what the whole point was, to get that. So you solve by taking the square root of both sides of the equation. Don't forget the plus and minus so that you get both solutions, and you're done. All right? Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Now it's time to go do some math.